Home Gas is a proud sponsor of CMR's Storm Ready 2022, as we stand ready to support you before, during, and after any storm. Here at Home Gas, our team of managers, field experts, and customer service agents work overtime to ensure that you are covered during hurricanes. With over 65 years of experience, we have been here with you through tropical depressions and major hurricanes like no one else. The same real-world experienced team that saw you through catastrophic Hurricane Ivan is still here, poised to continue offering the best service before, during, and after the storm. Contact us today at 345-949-7474 or email info@homegas.net.
All right, folks, welcome to another edition of Storm Watch. We're here live on, obviously, Cayman Hall Road. We've got Kevin and Lieutenant Colonel Simon Watson, who are both going to be joining us. And we might actually have someone from Hazard Management joining us in just a little bit as well. So I'm just getting the links out to quickly send out to everyone. And we were here last night at 8 o'clock, and we're back again this evening, folks, just to really keep you guys updated on where the storm is, what it's doing. It's been making some interesting movements, and the anticipation really is for what they call rapid intensification. So what that means for all of you is at this particular time is, you just want to be very, very mindful of where the storm is and what the storm's doing. So let's go ahead and pull in Kevin first. Lieutenant Colonel Simon Watson is going to spend probably just a couple minutes with us, telling us what the Cayman Islands Regiment is up to and what they're going to be doing. So all I can tell you is, all of the emergency units, folks, are on alert. They are preparing. I happened to have been out and about today, and I saw Hazmat. Looks like they had a team that were going around to the various locations. They were at the port when I saw them, and just making sure that, everything is ready. So Kevin, good evening. Let me just grab you here 1 second. How are you today?
I'm doing quite well. I was spending a lot of my day getting my own home prepared. As you know, I live, for those viewers out there in Tampa area in Central Florida. And so after it is finished with Cayman, it's going to be heading in my direction. So I too have to be prepared. I was supposed to be on a plane today, arriving in Cayman. Unfortunately, I did cancel my flight because I do have to, take care of my responsibilities here, as well as, make sure that I'm going to do what I can from here to also support what's going on in Cayman without any hiccups. So again, good night, Cayman. I'm here with you to bring you the latest and greatest of what's going on out there.
Absolutely. So this storm seems to be changing its path slightly. And if it continues, the 7 p.m. advisory has just gone out. And if it continues on that path, I must say that we are incredibly fortunate, because it looks like it's going to go a little bit south of us, which is ideal. But it's still one of those things that you cannot sit back and say with any degree of certainty that this is exactly what this storm is going to do. And all the weather forecasters are saying, listen, continue to prepare, because it's going to quickly intensify. And with fast intensification, we do know that, it can still change ever so slightly. But this is a projected path as of right now, which puts us outside of, sort of the direct, path of the storm. So that's good news. And we might still get some outer bands. So go ahead, Kevin, pull up your expert things for us and bring us up to speed.
What you said is, even though it might have shifted in this update a little bit to the west, and it does not mean that Cayman's out of the woods. Remember, you've always heard a lot of the forecasters say that do not focus on the center of the storm, because a storm is not just at the center. The worst part of the storm is in the northeastern part of the storm. That happens to be where the Cayman Islands is going to be in this system. So here we're going to zoom on in when it's on the latest update that just came in, the 8 o'clock advisory, which would have been 7 o'clock Cayman time. If we kind of zoom on in and take a look at how close the latest forecast is predicting that it's going to be, let's say we're going to go from Georgetown to when it's expected to be at 1 o'clock. It'll be 1 o'clock Cayman time on Sunday. It's about 150 miles away to the west of Grand Cayman. That being said, if you look at how large the system will be, and then you take a look at where the strong tropical storm force winds are, we'll zoom on in a little bit more. Most of Grand Cayman, East End, is pretty much only the part that's going to be experiencing mainly tropical storm force winds. But the yellow part on this map is showing where the strong tropical storm force winds are on this system. And so, somewhere between the upper 60s to low 70 miles per hour wind speed is going to be going on Grand Cayman sometime according to the latest forecast, sometime around 1 o'clock on Monday. Sorry, Monday, that is. I think I said Sunday earlier, but Monday is when that is happening. At that time, it is predicted to be a Category 2 hurricane. Again, the previous updates, yes, it's been shifting over to the west, but it does not mean by the 11 o'clock update or the 5 o'clock update that it's going to shift back to the east. So again, Cayman is not in the all clear. The all clear will be once hazard management says all clear. So continue to prepare, continue to watch it very closely. We know that these things are extremely unpredictable. These things have a sense of humor, is what some people say, because again, the models are always going to be adjusting based on what's going on, and we still need to make sure that we are doing our very best to do what we need to do to continue to protect our lives and our property.
Absolutely. And, I saw a number of people today going out and boarding up, which I thought was pretty smart. It's a good idea to do that. If you have shutters, of course, go ahead and put those shutters up. Some people are still trying to go to the grocery store, and I wasn't quite sure why, because I'm like, listen, at this point, the grocery stores are just about done. So we did hear the premier in his statement yesterday indicate that, they were lifting the Sunday trading restrictions so that grocery stores and other stores, hardware stores and so on could actually open if they wish to. But I can tell you that most of them have taken the position that they're actually going to remain closed on Sunday and Monday in order to give their own staff the opportunity to prepare, because tonight a shipment is coming in. And I want to clarify, there was a little bit of concern about a shipment that we had. One of the property owner or grocery store owners contacted me and said, hey, we've been told that although the shipment is coming in, it's not going to be allowed to, the port staff are not going to be clearing it. So it would probably go on to Jamaica just to get into safe harbor. And if that actually happened, that means that if they needed to quickly get supplies, it was then a situation of either having to bring those items in by plane or wait until the ship could get back to us, which would be an added cost to consumers here. So they were a bit concerned about that. My latest development is that there was a change, and the port staff have decided, the management at the port have decided to go ahead and allow the basically disembarkment of any of the supplies that are coming off the ship, so the ship can then carry on to its next port. So chances are it will go on to Jamaica. I did see that even the Jamaican Prime Minister issuing warnings late today to tell his people to prepare as much as possible. This is one of those things, folks, where it'll be different for Jamaica because they have the potential of mudslides and other things that we don't have because we don't have mountainous terrain, but we still have flash flooding, not flash flooding technically, but we have flooding capabilities that will be happening here. And of course, a lot of potential for wind damage and stuff as well. So let's bring in
as well, Sandy.
Storm surge, yes,
very
absolutely.
Big concern.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and bring in Lieutenant Colonel Simon Watson from the Cayman Islands Regiment. Good evening, Simon. How are you?
I'm good, Sandra. Very good evening, and very good evening to you as well.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. So of course, the regiment is one of those entities that will be very much hands-on throughout this entire process. Tell us a little bit about what your role will look like.
So thanks very much for having me on. And really, this is an opportunity to sort of talk to your listeners and maybe give a bit of more explanation of what we do as a regiment and how we support Cayman. So the regiment's got 100 men and women in it, and the majority of those, 95%, are reservists. So what that means is that they have day jobs. So they would have been at work yesterday. They may have been at work today. If not, they would have been, Kevin and myself have been doing, which is basically making sure that our houses are safe, that our families are safe, because when that storm comes tomorrow, they will be leaving their families and they will be going out to serve CMR. So, and that's what a reservist does. So the regiment's been preparing over the last 48 hours, and we're going to be mobilizing tomorrow morning. And what that means is that those men and women are going to report for duty. They're going to turn up. They're going to start deploying out on different taskings, whether that is supplying or manning the hurricane shelters, whether that is starting to evacuate people from flooding as the storm towards us. And bear in mind that the regiment is going to be working pretty much all the way through. When it gets to a really, really dangerous part, that's when we hunker down. But either side of that, during the storm, we'll be out there and we'll be supporting the emergency services, evacuating people. So some of the vehicles we have, some of the support vehicles we have, we've brought them into command specifically because we know there is a flood risk. So they're able to get through 3.5 feet of water, and their military ambulances, some of those vehicles we would have seen driving around, they're specifically designed to be able to get to those areas that other vehicles can't. And then obviously the sort of the debris clearance is if you're calling for the EMS, you're calling for the fire service, you're calling for the police. If there's a tree down, actually those emergency services aren't able to get there. So we have wheeled loader, we have chainsaw teams, and they're clearing those emergency routes, as I say, prior to the storm, during the storm, and immediately after as well.
Wonderful. So good evening to everyone who's joining us. I see we've got over 300 folks already on the live stream. Good evening to Ms. Bonnie, Wee Wee, Corrine is here. We've got some regulars, Emma, Angela, Andrea, Sandra, Miss Olive, Viola, Wendy is here as well, Miss Beulah, Irvelin. So lots of usuals. And then we've got some new people who were just really, really concerned about, the potential that the storm might have to impact their families and friends. So thank you, Irvin, for joining us as well. Nicola is watching this very, very closely. Some of you might be overseas and you have interest in the Cayman Islands. Of course, you want to know, precisely what is happening on the ground here. So, folks, that was Lieutenant Colonel Simon Watson, just giving us a little bit of an update on what it is that the regiment does and how, at a time like this, when we have a pending storm, how incredibly useful their resources are. They've got equipment. They've got men and women that are trained to be out there who will be able to assist directly, after the impact of any storm. And you guys are actually part of NEOC as well.
Absolutely, yeah. First, let me just say to all your viewers, you both, Kevin and Sandra, you look incredibly smart. Apologies, it's been a very long day. I'm here in a t-shirt at the end of the day.
Okay.
So sorry.
That's okay.
We are part of the National Emergency Operations Centre. And that is for those that don't know, that's a fantastic thing we have in Cayman. It's run and organised by hazard management, but it brings together all the different clusters. So emergency services, the utilities, medical side. So really every player that has a role to play in an emergency are all brought together in one room so they can communicate together, they can work together, and they can sort of keep everybody safe. And we are so lucky to have that.
Yes, absolutely.
Honestly, it's something that when you're here and you see it working, you think this is everyone in Cayman working together to support everyone in Cayman, and it's brilliant. So really fortunate to have that in Cayman. We, the regiment fits into that. So we work under the operations side. So we have amazing emergency services and great government agencies. But when there is an emergency, often the sheer amount of tasks that have to happen can be overwhelming. And that's where the regiment fits. It's a support agency in effect. So we're there and we support all the agencies and emergency services that need additional resources, and we can provide that. So we have a headquarters that is based at NEOC, and that's based in the Government Administration Building. We then have our A Squadron, which is based at John Gray, so that supports the west of the island, Grand Cayman. Have our B Squadron, which we forward locate to a forward operating base at Clifton Hunter, and that helps to cover the eastern and northern districts of Grand Cayman. We also have an 8-man team based in Cayman Brac, and that helps to support the sister islands.
All right, folks. And NEOC will be standing up tomorrow morning. Tomorrow afternoon. Sorry, is that still scheduled for 4 p.m. tomorrow? Is that still the plan?
That's what we're planning on. Yeah. So we're deploying at 0700. Sorry, 7 o'clock in the morning tomorrow morning. there, and
Yes.
that's really because often there's a lot of tasks, whether it's supporting public works with sandbags or just getting everybody ready for the for the storm. NEOC is starting at 4 p.m. in the afternoon, and that's still the plan. And obviously the weather is changing. And Kevin, thank you very much for that awesome update earlier on. When we started our planning, we were looking at tropical storm winds coming in at 10 p.m. in the evening, tomorrow evening, and then hurricane force wind later Monday morning. Obviously, we've seen a shift to the west, which is great. Let's be honest, it's fantastic news. But as Kevin said, we've still got to be prepared, because you can't go to bed thinking this is great, we don't need to worry about it, and then suddenly see that change and get hit by it. So it is so much better to all sit there on Monday afternoon going, well, weren't we lucky, than to be sitting there on Monday saying, I wish we prepared more.
Absolutely. And of course, the US is starting to watch the system extremely carefully. As Kevin said, it could very well be heading for him after it's finished with us here in the Tampa area. But again, it's a bit early to say exactly where in Florida it might be making landfall. So folks, thank you so much again for joining us. I know, Simon, that you're extremely busy, so we don't want to keep you any longer than we have to. But you guys will also be at certain locations at their shelters.
Absolutely, yeah. So one of the roles that we train our men and women for is to be able to support the shelters. So we've got personnel in all the shelters. So if you are taking refuge in the shelters, if you are going there, it's a really cool thing to do. If you're worried, go there. Our men and women will be there. They're there to help. We'll also have teams out on the road, so you'll see them moving around in the green. So we'll be out and about, just basically supporting the community.
Yes, wonderful. All right. Well, thank you very much. And depending on kind of, where we're at with this storm, I think that CMR might be able to do some live coverage after the event, really demonstrating and showing how incredibly, supportive the regiment is and what it is that they really do in situations like this. So we'll keep you guys updated if that's going to happen. So Simon, thank you. We appreciate it.
Guys,
really appreciate the work that you do.
Yep, be safe. All right. And we'll have another Simon who's going to be joining us here shortly, Simon Boxall, part of the hazard management team. Will be joining us and giving us a little bit of update on what they have been up to and what they've been doing as well. So Kevin, the intensification, it's anticipated that this storm will rapidly intensify. So we're definitely going to be keeping an eye on that. It seems like all the conditions are really, really ideal for that to happen.
Very warm waters, absolutely.
Yes.
Very warm waters. Shear is going to go away, and not a whole lot of land interaction that's really going to prohibit it from really developing. So it's not a great recipe to have when it comes to forming hurricanes, because it is doing what we don't want. It's going to blow up and start to form into something we don't want it to form into, a major hurricane expected somewhere in Florida. We don't exactly know where yet, like you rightly said earlier.
Yeah. So Tropical Storm Ian officially has been named, and packing some really, really interesting winds. Yesterday, I showed you guys a little snippet from this really interesting YouTube channel. I'm going to share his update. I just want to make sure that this is actually the latest one that he's put up, because, of course, a little bit has changed since then. But everyone is just continuing to, watch the system with a very, very keen eye, because it's anything possible at this point. It's kind of look like maybe it won't be so direct on us, which is good news, but you still have to proceed with caution. So I'm just going to pull this up so we can he does a really great job of just pulling everything together and explaining it, and I enjoy listening to him. So I will share this, and then Kevin's going to go through some of his charts and stuff that he has ready for us as well. So thank you guys so much for joining us. Just 1 second here.
Man, this Saturday morning, I'm meteorologist Brian Shields. Thank you for your trust with these systems, and thank you for sharing this channel to get the word out, especially through Jamaica, which I'm still pretty optimistic. And I'm going to get into that in Jamaica, Cayman Islands. I'm going to break it down. We're going to go island by island to give you the specifics on that. So you can see Jamaica here, and you can see this flaring up. This is Tropical Storm Ian, and it is bubbling up, still dealing with some wind shear, so not the best conditions in the short term for development. And about 3 days ago, we were talking about how I'm sort of optimistic for Jamaica. Totally still am. So that is some good news I want to pass along. Here's the latest track. And again, tropical storm watches are up for Jamaica. And then this will lift up toward the Cayman Islands. Still kind of a wait and see what happens there. But I'm going to break that down again, as I mentioned, in depth for Jamaica and the Cayman Islands. Then this will lift up toward western Cuba. I'm watching you. Then eventually Florida. Florida impacts are more likely, but as to where in Florida, it's maybe even a bigger question mark right now. Some of the big models take it into South and Central Florida. Others want to take it more back toward the Panhandle. That's a pretty big spread down the road. Look how active it is now. Remember this quiet hurricane season about a month ago? Not the case now. 4 named systems, of course. Ian in the Caribbean. We're watching up to the north. Fiona, Gaston out there. And then you have Hermine off the coast. My friends across, say, Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, up through Puerto Rico, St. Kitts and Nevis, down through Grenada, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Lucia, Montserrat. We're all in pretty good shape. Virgin Islands, just scattered showers and storms. So we're good in the Eastern Caribbean. Guyana, good as well. Now, we do have those tropical storm watches up for Jamaica, hurricane watches up for Cayman Islands, and then they will be expanded to include parts of the Yucatan of Mexico. It should be north of my friends in Belize, and watching out for some watches and eventual warnings for parts of Cuba, step by step. All right, this is the American model. This is Monday morning, and this is going to keep a system south and then west of Jamaica. So that is some good news overall, that this would be west of Jamaica, but very close to the Cayman Islands, especially Grand Cayman. And as I mentioned, I'm going to break that down specifically. Then this will work to the north. This is Tuesday morning. Tuesday morning, this takes a hurricane that is strengthening, lifting it from the Cayman Islands right into western Cuba. And then what happens after this is, well, the GFS wants to bring this more toward the Panhandle of Florida or the Big Bend at this point. The GFS has really been all over the place. You see it here. This is by Wednesday morning. What it's doing is there's a front to the north, and it's saying, hey, this front is kind of weak, so I'm going to just keep drifting up to the north. And that's what the GFS is saying. The European's different. It's still picking up on a strong front, and then that will lift to the north, and in the Caribbean, we're all in good shape. Now, here's the European model. This is Sunday evening, and this is still south and west of Jamaica. That is good news for Jamaica. Please pass that along to your friends and family. I'll break down Jamaica in a second, but this does lift close to the Cayman Islands, potentially as a strong tropical storm or hurricane. This is Monday evening, trying to leave the Cayman Islands and moving into western and maybe even central Cuba. And then by Tuesday morning, still around Cuba. And then eventually this is going to lift its way up into the general direction. It would lift its way up into the general direction of South Florida or Central Florida. Big spread on those models because they're having a hard time with that front. All right, specifically, my friends in Jamaica, no hurricane winds. West side, we're going to have some of the gustier winds. It just depends on some of those kind of rain bands that squeak in. Most of the weather is off to the west of us. But again, no hurricane winds. If you get some rain, 1 to 3 inches of rain possible. So we will get some of those gustier winds in spots. Treasure Beach on the south side, Montego Bay on the north side to the west. That's where we could see some of those rain squalls, but no hurricane winds. Those are going to be to the west, not even to the south. Most of the tropical storm force winds will also be offshore. So that is good news. We'll watch out for some scattered rain. Now, my friends in the Cayman Islands, worse weather in our western sections where we could get 6 to 10 inches of rain and flooding. Watching out, of course, for that coastal flooding, which is going to be a high potential. Late Sunday into Monday, that's the greatest risk of getting some of those impacts. So as we watch things along our western zones, we get over toward Georgetown, up toward the West Bay in Grand Cayman, we're going to have some of the winds 75 miles per hour plus hurricane conditions. So you want to make those hurricane preps today to be without power, as well as we get over towards, say, Gun Bay, as we get over toward Collier's Beach, for example, winds at about 65 miles per hour plus. Then we get over toward our smaller islands, and you could see here that not nearly as much, but still make those tropical storm preps, because we could even have some gust on both these islands as we work our way into Sunday night into Monday, close to hurricane force. So Cayman Islands, make some of the hurricane preps. Here you can see the tropical storm force wind probabilities. They're increasing. We're definitely going to get tropical storm force winds, Cayman Islands up through Cuba, then a little more uncertain, but increasing as we get into Florida. Look at Jamaica. Again, the tropical storm force winds, sustained winds, are going to stay offshore. Yeah, we could get some gusts, but they're staying offshore of Jamaica. Thank you for trusting me in this process with forecasting this. This will work its way toward the Cayman Islands, where hurricane force winds are, the chance of that is getting higher and higher as we go out in time. And then up to the north, big question mark, hurricane force winds are highly likely western Cuba, You need to make those hurricane preps. Not seeing any chance of hurricane force winds, Yucatan, or even down toward Belize. This is the earliest reasonable arrival time of tropical storm force winds. But in Jamaica, again, that's the sustained tropical storm force winds are offshore. This is from my friends in the National Hurricane Center, this graphic, and they always like to get people kind of ahead of the game. But tropical storm force sustained winds are not going to happen in Jamaica, but we're going to be seeing that again at least in the Cayman Islands, and then at least tropical storm force winds in a good portion of Florida down the road. All right, that covers that. How about Fiona in Canada? Thinking of our friends in Bermuda.
All right, folks. So that kind of gives us a good summary of where we're at. So, Kevin, I mean, obviously, I know, like I said, you've got a number of resources available to you. I think pretty much it's saying the same thing.
Just a little different. That update that he gave was
a little bit earlier.
So it was a little earlier. It did change slightly again. It did shift a little bit to the west of Cayman. So we have a lower chance of hurricane force winds based on this track. But again, it could easily switch back. We do have a high chance of still experiencing strong tropical storm force winds on Grand Cayman, and then just tropical storm force winds in Cayman Bracken and Little Cayman. But again, that's just this update. It's not here yet. It may switch back to the east, or it could go more west. We just need to continue to make sure that we are staying prepared and practicing everything as safe as possible. Because again, we don't want any injuries from this. If we get a little bit of structural damage, we could take care of that. We just had a regiment on. They're going to be responding. Government is doing all sorts of things to make sure that they respond quickly. I mean, I feel, Sandy, this is the best preparation that's gone on so far from any of the systems that I've had to deal with in the Cayman Islands in my lifetime, because I've always, hearing, I get disappointed seeing things not happening as well as information not flowing as much. But I think a lot of lessons have been learned from previous systems, and things are much better. I have never heard that we had UK people coming in to help support our efforts, as well as ships on standby getting ready to come in as soon as the storm leaves, and another one on standby should we need extra assistance. I've not heard that happen before. I've heard us begging for help and not getting some of the help that we necessarily needed. So again, I'm also very, very happy to see that so many people are actually taking it serious, because the grocery stores, from when I was first started to talk about this a number of days ago, that this was a slight possibility, we need to watch it, and of course it continued to show that it was going to be coming over to our area even more. People were already going to grocery stores and starting to get their early prep done, and that made me so happy, because I know people are not lackadaisical on trying to just wait it out, saying, oh, this is going to likely be just a close call and not going to happen again. So thank you very much, people, everyone in the Cayman Islands, for doing your part, and continue to do your part.
And we're going to bring Simon Boxall here in now from Hazard Management. But one of the interesting things about this storm, Kevin, is what it's projected to do. They're actually projecting this storm to be a Category 4 storm at some point. I mean, that's going to be, wherever that hits is going to be catastrophic. But let me just show you guys something really, really quickly. Kevin was talking about the preparation, folks. This is a local grocery store, I'm told. I don't know which one, but it's one of the Foster stores. And as you can see, I don't know if this is the can aisles or if this is the chips and snacks aisle, but this is completely cleaned out, folks. Nothing left on the shelf. So again, I don't think there's a need for them to open tomorrow, because it probably isn't very much that's left. But, they will be restocking into the night. I know that Woody Foster, Randy Marin, and the Colonels are all working very, very hard to make sure that, as soon as we have the all clear, that if you need any supplies or anything, they will definitely be adequately stocked and ready to go. So let's go ahead and bring Simon in. Good evening, Simon. How are you?
Good evening, Sandra. I'm doing okay. Good evening, Kevin. Really good to see you.
Hey, Simon. Nice to see you. I haven't seen you in a little bit, huh?
I know.
Yeah.
It's really good to see you. And I hope your father's doing well as well. He did so much for so long in the education to get schools ready when we were threatened by storms and hurricanes as well.
Absolutely. He's doing well.
Good.
So, Simon, it's so good to see you. Thank you for taking a little bit of time out of your busy schedule. You're part of the hazard management team. Give us an idea of what you guys have been doing in preparation for this particular junction at TS Ian.
Thank you, Sandra, for this opportunity, and good evening to our residents and listeners. So we've been busy. I would say there's so many different aspects to standing up the national response mechanism when we have a threat. Obviously, we have teams dealing with shelters, getting the shelters ready. We have so many stakeholders. Hazard management is a very small team, and we rely on so many other individuals, government officials, volunteers to make it all come together. So, there's logistical aspects. You talked earlier about the supermarkets and, the stocking of the shelters that needs to take place. We need to have meetings with the National Hazard Management Council, which is every single head of government departments and a number of other private sector entities and volunteer agencies. And we come together to ensure that all the critical functions of government continue without being interrupted, or at least if they are, that we get them back up and running very quickly. We try to communicate effectively to the public. As Kevin was alluding to when I was in the backstage, we've been working with the British government as well to ensure that the ship is following in behind the storm. There are members of a military team down in Cayman, and there'll be additional people arriving after the storm, who are able to land in different areas in rigid inflatable boats and support debris clearance activities, ensuring that the regiment are ready. But Director Danny Coleman's been incredibly busy, meetings all the time, because the decisions aren't just made by hazard management. Of course, we have critical partnership with the National Weather Service, Mr. John Tibbetts and his team, and the Deputy Governor. And so there's been a lot going on, I would say. There's lots of things I could talk about, but I've been going on a bit there already.
So we do know that we were just speaking to the other Simon from the regiment, that there is obviously the NEOC group, which will be standing up tomorrow, which essentially is, can you tell us who's in that group? I know we mentioned it last night, but tell us what different agencies and individuals make up that emergency group.
That's a great question. So there are 17 emergency support teams, which basically cover all the different functions of the response and the recovery. And so some of them, and they all have to really kind of work in concert together. So initially, say we have, if we have a threat, as we do now, one of the important ones is the Joint Communication Service. And Kevin, as an experienced and knowledgeable communicator, will know that there's a lot of work to do in the lead up. So we break the NEOC down into a number of different clusters, which are similar kind of areas of responsibility. So support services, as I said, is joint communications is one of those.
Right.
And that's led by Onisha Richards and Ruth Miles. But it's basically a whole bunch of different government communicators, because in a crisis situation or a disaster, government really needs to speak clearly and with one voice. We can't be all saying different things at different times. So we ensure that, maybe there are 17, 18, 20 different communicators, because we had to get the word out to the tourists. I think there are 4,000 or 5,000 tourists on the island at the moment in accommodation, and a number of hotels are closing. So how do we get the message to them? The evacuation subcommittee then becomes really important. How do you get them all off the island if their tickets were, scheduled for a few days out? So you've got Mr. Albert Anderson heading that up at the evacuation EST. So continuity of operations is really important as well. We have to make sure that government continues to function. So that's also under the support services cluster. How does government continue to operate effectively? What are some of the critical areas that can't stop? Things like law enforcement and so on. And then you have, I'm sorry, I'm just standing up, making sure I have it all. I should have it right in front of me, Sandra, but
yeah, that's okay.
support is critical.
Yeah.
We saw in COVID-19, millions and millions of dollars were being spent on the response to ensure that, we had masks and vaccines and testing kits. So in the aftermath, some people might be really hurting. You may have sectors of the economy heavily impacted, like tourists, or after Paloma, so many elderly people didn't have power in their houses. We were really worried that, that their medications and things would spoil. Difficult circumstance. So I think something like 200 generators were shipped across to Cayman Brac. They had to rent a couple of the tenders to get them across. So if we need assets and resources quickly to ensure that people survive, if we get hugely impacted, that we got water trucks in the communities, that we got food, distribution items. So resource support is critical. Do you want me to catch a breath and carry on, or just carry on?
Yeah, that's fine. No worries.
Economic continuity.
We're used to talking a lot. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just jump in real quick, Simon, and say, I've worked in emergency operations for disasters here in Florida. Of course, our setup is slightly different, but it's very, very similar. We follow a lot of the same things, and it's amazing to see that work being carried out. And you have all of the key players and decision makers in one location where we could just walk across the aisle and speak to each other, so we could action things. And then it helps not just for the preparation, but after the event, when it comes to trying to get back to normal. You have so many things happening a lot faster, as opposed to having to work through all of the challenges if you're not right there and present. So it's really good to see Cayman evolving and getting better at doing this. And again, it takes a few trial runs, and every time you always have an after action report that's done, and you look at things that worked well, things that did not work well, and then you start to figure out, okay, how are we going to make improvements for the next time it happens? Because it will happen for the next again at some point in time. So again, I really appreciate the work that you guys have been doing. I know when I was growing up, we did not have that sort of setup, and I know Danielle is an amazing person that's overseeing the operations, continuing to make a lot of great changes that's really ultimately going to save a lot of lives now and in the future in the Cayman Islands.
Yes, and just to lead on from what you're saying, Kevin, you're absolutely right. I mean, it gives you incredible situational awareness when you have all these different teams there. I mean, the ambulances and things aren't going to run until you have debris clearance. We need to do our initial damage assessment. So we've got another team for that, to figure out where's been hit hardest, where needs resources. Our utilities, again, they're not going to move if the road is full of debris. So, we have a utilities EST looking at, water and electric, obviously, and very senior managers are in the NEOC talking to one another. So, like you say, you could just walk across the room and say, how's it going with, often in an emergency, you have a number of people that are waiting on medical assistance because the ambulances aren't running, at tropical storm force winds. So there's a backlog. But we also have this internet-based emergency operations center, so we can see what everybody's doing, which tasks are being done. I don't know whether you use NEOC, but it's a web-based emergency operations center. So you can see all the significant events, the mission tasks as they're occurring. And then, of course, we've got the policy group, which is a higher level
executives,
with the cabinet secretary and these really very intelligent decision makers supporting both the NEOC, those subcommittees, and then at the top you've got the executive. So you saw in COVID-19, all the laws were changing very quickly. Money was being released, decisions were being made, because in that executive, you got the Attorney General, you got the Commissioner of Police, you've got the Governor, you've got the Premier. So it's critical decision makers. So it all becomes like this missile just focused on getting the country back on its feet as quickly as possible. And as you said, we've improved. And COVID really helped a lot because we were active for a long time and we got better at doing it.
Wonderful. Well, we do have joining us as well. We're going to see if we can get someone here from CUC, but we have the National Weather Service Director General, Mr. John Tibbetts. We know that obviously he's obviously one of the people that's going to be in the thick of this. So good evening, John. Thank you so much for joining us. So good to have you here. What are you seeing from this system? It looks like it's making some different movements late in the day today. What's your feeling about this?
Well, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me good?
Yes, sir. We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Well, what we have is a system's not particularly well organized. It is still trying to get its act together.
Right.
And its motion is generally westerly. And depending on the times that you catch it, sometime it'll have a little bit of a southwest motion. Otherwise, it'll have a little bit of a west-northwest motion. Because its cloud pattern is still trying to get its act together, it's not really quite ready in the position for rapid intensification or anything of that sort. So it's moving along and gradually getting in a better position with its cloud pattern coming, trying to get together to see if it can intensify. So we're going to have to be watching this for the next few days as it intensifies and moves west of us, and so we'll see how it goes. At some point, it is expected to take a bit of a west-northwest turn, and when it does so, then it starts to become a threat, even more of a threat to the Cayman Islands. It is going to be critical for us when that west-northwest turn occurs, and how much of a west-northwest turn it is.
Wow. So can you just remind our listeners as well, they've heard these different terms being thrown out over the last couple of days, a hurricane watch, a hurricane warning. Just kind of run us through what those mean.
Well, first of all, we were operating under a hurricane watch. Now, a hurricane watch basically means that hurricane force wind conditions are likely in the area in 48 hours time. Okay. The warning is in 36 hours. So for right now, the set of warnings that is out for the Cayman Islands is a warning. A hurricane warning has been issued for Grand Cayman, and a tropical storm watch for the sister islands.
Right.
Okay. So the tropical storm watch would mean that tropical storm wind conditions are likely or possible in 48 hours.
All right. So we're going to continue, obviously, folks, to watch the system very, very carefully. A lot of people have been boarding up and taken what seems like good preparatory steps to prepare for a hurricane. What's the best advice that you can give people?
Monitoring it. You have to monitor the system. I mean, yesterday we did a briefing for the government, and at that time, this system was forecast to move east of Grand Cayman. Okay, and by evening and afternoon, it was west of Grand Cayman.
Wow.
All right. So you do have to monitor it. The intensity will be very, very critical. There's a whole lot of difference between a tropical depression or a tropical storm directly impacting you as to a much larger hurricane. And the preparation is different and everything like that. So the best advice we have for people is to prepare for the worst, but hope for the best.
Yep. And the weather experts and meteorologists have been saying that as it's positioned now, they're expecting rapid intensification to occur. So, of course, that means that you definitely want to be paying attention and listening to all of the official sources, Cayman Prepared, the Weather Service, and so on, who will be issuing any notifications that the public needs to be aware of. And, of course, as soon as we know here on CMR, we'll update our listeners and our viewers as well. All right. Well, thank you, sir, so much for joining us tonight. I know that you're probably getting very little sleep these days, so we don't want to want to keep you too long. But if we do another segment tomorrow, of course, we will check in with all of the respective persons who have a minute or two to spare for us. So thank you again, sir.
Okay. Have a good night, Sandra.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate it.
Good night,
all right,
John.
Simon, we're also not going to keep you too long. I know you've been working overtime, but is there anything else that you'd like to share with us at this particular stage?
Well, I just want to thank you and Kevin. I mean, I've been listening to the show, and you've been providing some really important and useful advice to the public, and we depend so much on our media partners, and you've been doing an excellent job, both of you. So I think you've been a real asset to the community. Yeah, I don't think it's time to let the guard down. Obviously, the system can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, we're on the strong side of the system, the right front quadrant potentially still, even though it's going quite far off. I think the Deputy Governor and Mr. Tibbetts made it clear that it's not a good time to let down our guard now, that we should continue to monitor this thing. I recommend people, if it does start approaching us, turn your fridge and freezer down to the coldest setting, get your car up to higher ground, start making as much ice as you can, fill up little plastic bags, pack every corner of your freezer. It's uncomfortable when the power goes out. Have a flashlight and a battery. Make sure you can tune into the radio, and just hunker down and help your neighbor out if you're in a position to, if you're already ready. So many people I see have already got their shutters up. It's really good to see, and the fact that the store shelves are looking pretty barren is obviously showing that people are taking it seriously, as they should. And so we will, I believe Cayman is stronger and we'll get through it. But it's, don't take it lightly, even though it does look like it's moving further away. I think tomorrow morning we'll have a much better idea, when they meet again in the morning, and we'll see whether or not we'll get through it again. I don't know whether it's the Cayman Prayer Warriors or what it is, but
yes,
it looked like it was coming right at us.
Yes, for sure.
Taking off, the forecast has changed. But thank you both so much.
Yeah, we appreciate it, Simon. So, have a good night, and we'll possibly speak to you again tomorrow.
Yeah, God bless.
Okay, thanks so much. All right, folks. So we've heard from a few people this evening, and kind of, getting a little touching bases with hazard management. We've spoken to someone from the regiment. We've always spoken to John Tibbetts, Director General for the Weather Service. We were trying to get a hold of someone from CUC, but listen, a lot of the telecom companies were out there. I think it was both CUC and Flow and Logic, and all these guys have people out in the field today checking all of their assets to make sure everything is safe and secure, and that they are ready to ride out this storm, whatever may come. So absolutely wonderful.
And speaking of CUC, Sandra, I just want people to make sure. Now, let's say the lights start to go off because the storm starts to pick up and the lights go off and you turn on your generator. Make sure we use the generator wisely. Don't have it in your garage. Don't have it inside your house. Make sure it is on the outside. If you're afraid of someone going to walk off of it or whatever reason, you chain it down or do something to secure it in that way. But do not use your generator inside at all. And I would recommend that you get a carbon monoxide meter and put that inside your home. So you could just kind of have an idea if that will alarm if there's carbon monoxide building up inside your home. So make sure that you know how to use it and do it properly. The instruction manuals are there for a reason. Make sure you read it and understand it. Don't say just, I got this thing, I'm just going to hit this button and it's going to come on. No, that's not how it works. It's a little bit more science behind it to make sure that you're also doing it safely.
Absolutely. So if you're planning and traveling over the next couple of days, you'll want to be mindful of what Cayman Airways has done. So they've made a couple announcements this afternoon. Let's go ahead and spend a little bit of time just pulling those up for you, because there'll be no flights scheduled for Monday. So if you were coming in or out of the Cayman Islands on Monday, please be aware that that is definitely not going to happen. Just give me 1 second here. I'm going to pull this up. So this is the latest that we have from Cayman Airways, which came in a bit later on this afternoon. So all Cayman Airways flights canceled now for Monday due to Tropical Storm Ian. The airport closures in Cayman will impact anyone who had flights booked for that particular day. And then they've done what they call recovery flights, which have been added for Tuesday and Wednesday's schedule to accommodate passengers who were affected or will be affected by Monday's cancellation. So if you're traveling to Tampa, KX 3203 is going to now leave Tampa at 9:45 a.m. and arrives in Grand Cayman at 10:40. You've got La Ceiba departing Grand Cayman, KX 3882, and then it comes back as KX 3883. So be mindful if you're going to Honduras that it's going to leave Grand Cayman at 11:40 on the 27th, and then leaves La Ceiba at 12:15, and then KX 3883, arrives in La Ceiba at 12:15. This one is going to depart La Ceiba at 1:20 and arrive back in Grand Cayman at 3:45 Cayman time. Miami, does this look like KX 3103? That doesn't sound like Miami. Maybe they meant 103.
That's most likely a special flight number. It's an additional.
Yeah, maybe because yes.
Usually it'll be 103, but when it's a special flight, they put that 3 in front.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's what they've done with the Ceiba ones, 882 and 883. Got it. So Miami departs Miami at 9:40 in the morning and arrives in Grand Cayman at 10:10. You've got the New York flight being rescheduled, and then 2 for Kingston. So again, you want to make sure, in case there are any additional changes to this, that so that's the recovery flights for Tuesday, and then Wednesday is Havana and Kingston. They're adding additional flights to accommodate those individuals. So just make sure that you keep up with Cayman Airways. Of course, they've got a toll-free number that you can call so that you are aware of exactly, what is happening in terms of any changes that could be impacting your travel plans. Now, the Department of, we mentioned this yesterday a little bit as well, Department of Environmental Health has some garbage collection notices that they want people to be aware of. So there will be no collection on Monday. Again, this is because of the severe weather that is coming in, and then it will resume, if all goes well, on Tuesday. But of course, there'll be a day behind the schedule until they get caught back up. Just a reminder also from the Water Authority about sanitation during and after storms. So the Water Authority is urging the general public to have adequate quantities of portable water. They should also have sufficient supply of water to flush their toilets if there's an interruption in the piped water supply. And water can, of course, be stored in things like buckets for non-potable use, and should piped water not be available. And to conserve water, remember to only flush solid waste by pouring water into. Yes, that's how you do it. And if you run out of non-potable water prior to the restoration of pipe service, you should be prepared to safely dispose of human waste. So don't just throw it out the backyard, folks. Proper disposal of personal waste is really, really important in order to minimize public health hazards. And they say using basic materials, suitable temporary disposal may be accomplished by placing waste in a watertight plastic bag and securely closing the bag. This is one of those, what comes in really handy at a time like this, Kevin? You don't have any kids, but you might know about those little blue diaper bags. They're kind of similar to what you do for dogs. Like dogs have kind of the equivalent when you go and you pick up your dog poop when you're walking your dog. It's one of the things that you want to have on hand. They're good for so many things that even after my daughter came out of diapers, I just kept buying them and I use them for all sorts of like sanitary things. So they're ideal for that. And it just came to my mind that this is one of those times when you would definitely want to have that available. So the HSA closed early. The pharmacy closed early today. They closed at 3 p.m. And they were advising people, to get your medications if you need it. Now, Sunday, which is tomorrow, the pharmacy will be open from 9 a.m. until 12 a.m. only. So if you need those prescriptions topped up, please get in there. And then on Monday, both HSA pharmacies will be closed. So they're not planning to be open at all. And if you have any non-emergency surgeries or anything like that scheduled for Monday, of course, you should be aware now that none of that stuff is going to be happening. Even Health City sent out a notification in relation to non-emergency services, elective surgeries, and so on, not being available. So that's kind of where we're at, folks. We're going to continue to monitor the system as much as we possibly can to bring you all of the latest updates. It looks like we're going to be in a fortunate position yet again. And yeah, that would be a bit of good news, but it's too early to say. So don't underestimate the situation.
Don't rule it out, because again, it could shift back to the east very easily. So I don't want to give people false hope until we really know, because again, it's not past the Cayman Islands yet. It's just that the last couple updates, it looks like it's been moving a little bit to the west. It doesn't mean, again, the next update might undo that good news. So, but one of the next things too, if you're considering a shelter, to go to the hurricane shelter, 2 p.m. Sundays when they're going to be opening up, and they're going to be opening 5 shelters in Grand Cayman. Again, at 2 o'clock, Sir John A. Cumber Primary School, John Gray High School, which is a pet-friendly shelter. And remember, if it's a pet-friendly shelter and you plan on bringing your pet, go to the Hazard Management's website and read over the requirements. Things like models are required, as well as some other documentation. Bordentown Primary School, Clifton Hunter High School, which is another pet-friendly shelter, and also the East End Civic Center. And so all of those shelters are also emergency medical centers. So if you need some sort of medical assistance, and you're not really at the point where you really require hospitalizations, because that needs to be saved for people who require that type of level of care, as well as for emergencies, you could go to the shelter and get taken care of for your basic medical needs at that time. So these are things you should be also kind of having a backup plan, that say something happens and your home is no longer safe because it's either flooded or you might have lost your roof, and for some reason you could make it to one of the shelters. Have a backup plan to know where your closest one is, just in case you have to evacuate for any reason,
right?
Especially those who are on the coastal area along West Bay Road in the southern part of the island, because again, we are in the not so good part of the storm. Even though it's moving a little bit away, storm surge still travels a good distance, and those who have those nice beach homes, you're not going to like your beach home in the middle of a storm that is passing close by. Those waves could get extremely large. I have not looked yet at how high it's anticipated at this time. I'll probably have that on tomorrow's update. But storm surge can be a number of feet, and moving water is very, very dangerous. And so you want to make sure that you have those homes. If you live in those homes, you might want to consider going to a friend's house or to a public shelter, to not have to deal with a potential evacuation in the middle of a hurricane, because that's the worst time to make that decision. I mean, it's not even advised unless it's life-threatening. So keep these things in mind.
And just one quick note, I know yesterday, I think it was Minister Turner was talking about the necessity, special situations if you need oxygen and so on. And I did have a few people who were watching the program who messaged about what was the process to get the oxygen. And so I did reach out to the HSA, and they basically said that you go to the A&E and you simply ask them for it, and they'll call the shift coordinator, who will then arrange for you to get the extra oxygen to make sure that you are all set. We have a question here from Miss Marjorie. She's asking, I have PGT windows. Do I still need to put up shutters over them? The simple answer is yes. If it was a hurricane that was coming, you would want to try to cover as many as your windows as possible, for sure.
Yeah. And one of the things that I really appreciated and liked that Minister Saunders was said when he was on yesterday or last night, is that the government is also looking at, instead of plywooding or getting a lot of plywood for individuals, they're looking at potentially getting storm shutters for folks that need that extra assistance, which is a very smart thing to do, because ultimately that's reusable. Plywood, after you take that down and stuff, it might not be as usable again in the future, and it also costs a whole lot more in the long run. So I mean, I really appreciate them taking a look to see how that could be a realistic thing for the future.
All right, folks. Very good. Okay, so we will keep you all in the loop here on Cayman Mall Road. Kevin is constantly monitoring systems. I've got several websites that I'm just sort of watching and stuff as well. Constantly watching the news, folks, to see what's coming down the pipeline. And of course, now that the US is watching it even more because it's coming a little bit closer, they have been doing quite a bit of coverage. Let me just pull in, give me 1 second here, Kev. I'm going to actually just pull in this one as well, because I've seen them just going live. They've actually got a webcam from Cayman. This was so super cool. Check this out. They are really watching us. Remember, Before we didn't even used to get a mention. Look, Cayman Islands,
Yep.
IP live cams. There we are, folks. So give me 1 second. I'm going to just increase the volume.
A little farther to the west. Good evening. Thanks for staying with us. I'm Storm Specialist Carl Parker, along with meteorologist Mike Bettis. Mike, it's been a relatively slow start to the season so far, but that changed really rapidly.
Things have really picked up this week. We've had numerous named systems in the Atlantic Basin. Now, I think the United States could be directly affected by a hurricane. The president has approved the emergency declaration in Florida, and Florida is the only state within the forecast cone at this point, and all eyes there. Here's what Ian is doing right now. 45-mile-per-hour winds, westerly movement at 14 miles per hour. Both of those things expected to change here over the next 24 hours. The wind speeds associated with the storm expected to go up. We could be looking at a high-end tropical storm, low-end hurricane by this time tomorrow. The movement expected to turn more to the north as well and not continue its westward motion, which as of now would take it over toward, say, Central America, Nicaragua, and Honduras. That's not anticipated to happen. There's the turn expected here over the next 24 hours. By tomorrow, should be about here. By Monday evening, about here. And look at the intensity really cranking up. Category 3, Category 4 in this area right here. The Northern Caribbean Sea and Southern Gulf of Mexico. There could be effects in places like Cuba and then onward to, at least this point, we believe, Florida. The atmosphere is ripe for strengthening as well. Nothing's holding it back at this point. Warm sea surface temperatures, low wind shear environment, high pressure overhead that really allows the system to ventilate. But there's a close-up view of where the cone is in Florida. From down here around, say, the Naples area, all the way over to the Pensacola area and all points in between, including inland locations, even extending up into Alabama and into Georgia as well. So in all these places, if you're within this cone, you should be thinking about, okay, what do I need to do to protect myself, protect my property from this system and likely a major hurricane. Here's a look at the expected arrival times of tropical storm force winds. So winds that could be between, say, 39 miles per hour and low 70s. All right, so we're talking by potentially as early as Tuesday evening in the Keys in Southwest Florida, then up through the peninsula, then eventually up into North Florida here by Wednesday evening for tropical storm force winds. Hurricane force winds may soon follow after that. Tropical storm watches and hurricane warnings in effect here in the Cayman Islands. Grand Cayman under that hurricane warning. That's the westernmost island there. Here's a look at the high-resolution future radar modeling here. This is going to give you an indication of what the storm could be doing for us over time. By Sunday evening, this is actually forecasting even a center of circulation where you might be seeing an eye trying to form even here. Not out of the question. I think that's going to be a slam dunk that we get an eye probably going into Monday as this thing really strengthens quickly. In this particular scenario, hitting here, the western tip of Cuba. There'll be some land interaction there. We don't think it's going to cause a lot of weakening, however. It's a slim little island at that point, and it'll be quick to go into Cuba and come out of Cuba. Here's a look at the modeled wind forecast from the European model. Same thing, winds really begin to crank up, especially on the eastern side of this, going through the next couple of days, and then really becoming a well-defined circular system. European model has this going into the west coast of Florida. GFS model, Carl, has it doing something a little bit farther northbound here. Either way, Florida, you're at serious risk.
Yeah, and there's been a westward shift in the modeling in the last day. The big question is that shift going to hold? Because
as it happens, it can waver back and forth, right?
We actually have a term for that. We call that windshield wipering because it's sort of, back and forth like windshield wipers. So that's certainly a possibility. We'll see. I mean, the next day is really going to be critical. If we wake up tomorrow, we see the modeling is still a little farther west, then that is going to lessen the impacts in Florida, but not get rid of them altogether, even if it is more towards the northern Gulf Coast. And also keep in mind, even though Alabama and Mississippi and Louisiana are not in the cone right now, the cone is not an impacts cone. The cone is showing you the average forecast error over time. And so certainly it's possible that the center part of the storm could be even farther west. The big issue is this big U-shaped feature across the eastern part of the country here. That's a big trough of low pressure. It's going to exert some pull on the storm. The question is, how much pull is it going to exert? Now, if it pulls it a little more rapidly, then it's going to take it farther to the east here. So this eastward track is a little bit faster. That also implies that we could be looking at a more intense storm at landfall, because as the storm gets farther and farther north, there's going to be stronger wind shear in the upper levels of the atmosphere, and that is going to tend to weaken it as it gets right towards the northern part of the Gulf Coast. So if it's more of a right track, more of an eastward track, we could be looking at a stronger storm. But there's still a lot of spread here. When you look at these ensemble members, I mean, look at the distance that is still involved here. So by no means is this a settled forecast at this time. Then you see as we go into Saturday, very widespread there. But again, as the storm gets up into this latitude, it should be weakening pretty dramatically because of that increased wind shear. Now, let's talk about the European model. And these are the ensemble members of the European model. And the European model is still a little farther to the east. So what's showing up in the European modeling is a sharper trough or a more intense area of low pressure along the East Coast that does have more of a pull on the system, is more likely to grab it and take it towards the Northeast. So you see a lot of members here indicating an impact along the west coast of Florida. Now, where is a really tricky question because of the nature of the coastline. A little bit of a deviation in that track is going to make a huge difference in terms of where the core would come on shore. And of course, if it's farther west like this, misses the west coast of Florida altogether, and it's more towards the Panhandle and more towards the northern Gulf Coast. So there are still.
All right, folks. So we will continue for sure to watch this situation, Kevin. You see that even as we look at these models with the projected paths, the little yellow squiggly lines all over the place, there's one to the far right that's still really close to Cayman. Yep. So, you know, that's the uncertainty that they're talking about.
Absolutely. I mean, it could change very, very easily. So, I mean, that's why I keep on repeating, do not let your guard down. The only time it's okay to let the guard down is once the all clear is given. Once it's beyond the Cayman Islands, okay, we've escaped it. But even though I know I got friends, oh, look, it's shifting west. It's shifting west. It's calm down, calm down. It doesn't mean it's going to continue doing that, because one, just like he said, that windshield wiper effect, it could go west, it could go east, it could go right back, and we don't want people to get caught off guard or lower their guard. We need people to continue to pay very, very close attention. You know, on Monday or so, we will definitely know what's going on, and by Tuesday, we will definitely know if that westerly track will continue to not impact us. We will, because it will be over us at that point in time. And you know, like I had messaged or not messaged, but was showing a little earlier on the track. It's looking to be, based on the latest model, at 8 o'clock Eastern, which would have been at 7 o'clock Cayman time. It's showing a Cat 2 storm, so this is going to be intensifying up until Monday, and that's when it's in line with the Cayman Islands, or Grand Cayman, that is, and it's not that far away. I mean, 100 miles for a Cat 2 storm is still in the possibility of causing some good, strong tropical storm force winds that could cause damage. Not to mention the storm surge for those who are on that western and southern coast, especially. Those areas need to be very, very careful with the storm surge. And so again, we'll kind of move it up. Sorry, let me make sure I have that right. Move it on up, and as you know, you saw in the forecast, once you get beyond Cuba, you're going to looking at a Cat 4 type system before it potentially moves on into Florida. We don't know again where in Florida. I'm right here in this area. This is right around where I live. And so again, I have to make sure that I'm continuing to prepare, even though the center is a little bit well offshore to the left and looks like it's going to get into the Big Bend area, up in that Panhandle area, but it's not necessarily guaranteed. So I'm going to continue my preparation and make sure that I am well ready for if this happens to be a bigger impact for my area. Looks like it might come in, somewhere in Florida as a Cat, somewhere between a Cat 4 and a Cat 2. So we'll see. That spread is quite large, so we need to continue to watch it. Look at this little zigzag approach. It was going down, then it went up, it went down, it went across. These are things that these storms do. They're not 100% predictable. We could have educated guesses. The computers could start to figure out, okay, what's going on, but it's not 100%. So we have to just make sure we're doing our part.
All All right, folks. So that's where we're at now. We will definitely continue to monitor the system without a doubt. They're predicting, really quick intensification. So Kevin and I will sign off for now. I'll play this video a little bit more so you guys can watch a little bit of this, and then we'll sign off for the evening. So continue to watch it to get your updates. I know some of you don't necessarily have access to weather channels and so on. So Kevin, have a good night, and we will chat tomorrow.
Good night, Cayman.
All right.
Peak intensity because there's that memory, there's
and
that lag.
How many times have we seen that before, though, Carl? Like a Hurricane Ivan that hit the Panhandle, Katrina that hit in New Orleans. They weakened. These were Cat 5s in the Gulf of Mexico. They weakened to 3s at landfall, but they had tremendous amounts of surge. Michael intensified and made landfall as a Category 5, had less surge.
Yes, and size also has a lot to do with that too. If you've got a larger storm, and this storm is going to have a pretty large wind field, and if it is a larger storm with a very high intensity, then you're also going to be looking at a huge surge impact. Wanted to very quickly show you also what we've seen in some of the modeling here about climate change and rapid intensification. The modeling has indicated that this is not something that is natural, that this is something that is most likely related to warming oceans.
Probably not what we want to hear, especially when one is just a few days away. Carl, good stuff there. Now, we know that with most of Florida in the cone, people already starting to prepare the store shelves. They're quickly emptying as people stock up on water and non-perishable items. In Tampa, residents say they're not taking any chances.
Saturday. I don't play around with a Cat 3, and all the spaghetti models is running it right into there. If it takes a turn, then good for us. We got boards for the next one, but I'm not taking no chances this time.
Love the attitude there, by the way. He knows his spaghetti models and he's not taking chances. That's awesome. True Floridian, right? Well, it's been nearly 4 years since Florida's seen a direct hit from a hurricane. Last one was Hurricane Michael in October of 2018. Michael hit Mexico Beach as a Category 5, the first Cat 5 to hit the U.S. since Andrew hit South Florida in 1992. Then, the year before that, it was Hurricane Irma, dealt a strong blow to South Florida. I stood right in it there in Naples as the winds gusted over 130 miles an hour. And now, once again, Florida's Gulf Coast could have to brace for another one.
Now, you told me earlier when you were doing this live shot that a tornado passed within, what'd you say, 50 yards?
It was on the street behind me there. I had no idea. But that's another threat that can come with eye walls of landfalling hurricanes. You can get these very quick spin-ups of tornadoes. They can cause a real ramp up in wind speed briefly, but that can be enough to damage a neighborhood.
You said you thought it was actually starting to die off a little bit, but then suddenly got a huge gust.
It was a very strange moment because it seemed like the winds had been coming down for maybe the last, say, 30 minutes or so that I was out there. Then all of a sudden, I almost got blown down the street. I was like, wow, that seemed really unusual. Here to find out afterwards, going back and looking at some of the video, there was actually a little tornado that literally was right behind me. I never even knew it. You'd never see them, Carl. They're so hard to pick out because everything's white and gray and you can't see anything. You're not ever going to spot one. And they usually happen for seconds. Most of them last for a minute or less.
Just these brief little spin-ups, but they can really intensify the wind very quickly. Let's also talk about what's going to be happening here in Florida.
Home Gas is a proud sponsor of CMR's Storm Ready 2022, as we stand ready to support you before, during, and after any storm. Here at Home Gas, our team of managers, field experts, and customer service agents work overtime to ensure that you are covered during hurricanes. With over 65 years of experience, we have been here with you through tropical depressions and major hurricanes like no one else. The same real-world experienced team that saw you through catastrophic Hurricane Ivan is still here, poised to continue offering the best service before, during, and after the storm. Contact us today at 345-949-7474 or email info@homegas.net.